What's up? Welcome back to the show. Today, favorite time of year, our annual check in with Matt Warshaw. Matt Warshaw and Dick Metz are actually going toe to toe for being the most frequent guest on Surf Splendor. I think they have about 7 episodes each at this point, but it's an honor for me to even be able to say that. Two of the people who I've come to respect the most in the surf world. So, welcome back, Matt Warshaw. We do this every year basically to support the EOS's fundraising efforts. They do a fund drive at the end of the year. And if you're not familiar with the EOS or Matt Warshaw, or you're just new here, Matt Warshaw is the author and founder of the Encyclopedia of Surfing and the author of the History of Surfing. He's an original Z-Boy from Dogtown, if you've seen the documentary or the film adaptation. He's also the Oxford English Dictionary consultant for all things surf. He's a former professional surfer, former editor at Surfer magazine, and much, much more. He's dedicated the last decade of his life to the EOS.surf, also known as the Encyclopedia of Surfing.com, which is in the middle of the fund drive, as I mentioned. You can become a member for $5 a month if you aren't already, or if you're responsible for a charitable budget here at the year end, consider allocating some of that towards preserving surf history. Matt has spent the last year or two building out a new project that he calls EOS Archives. He'll explain what that is later. Suffice to say, he has dedicated his time to cataloging and archiving surfing's original source materials, often directly from the mouths of the people themselves who lived it and created it. Without him, much of it would be lost to history, and very little of it is actually accessible on the internet or even digitally archived. So this is a very important project. That's why we're here to support. Before we get into the show with Matt, just a quick word to acknowledge our industry partners who make Surf Splendor possible. Of course, that's Veyor Watches, veyorwatches.com/Surf Splendor. Sophisticated, timeless, perfect gift for Christmas. We'll save you 15%. The watches are actually really durable, classic designs, and they're built well, so you could actually hand this down potentially to future generations even, which makes it an incredible gift. They outfit the entire North Shore Lifeguard Association, and will save you 15% by going through veyorwatches.com/Surf Splendor. RealWatersports.com has everything and anything that you might need for any water sport. They have shipping deadlines on their website right now on the homepage, so you can make sure that you receive your gift or purchase before the holiday. They've also dropped an excellent episode of their series Under the Glass with Brett Barley reviewing the Paizel Power Tiger, both as a squash tail or a round tail. So check that out. They're excellent surfboard reviews on realwatersports.com. And then an important message from the Surfrider Foundation, who is celebrating 44 coastal victories in 2025 alone. Adding these with their others, they're totaling now over 1,000 coastal victories in their 41-year history. They're protecting the ocean, reducing the impact of plastics, and ensuring beach access and clean water for all. They have measurable and definable results that are really only limited by the number of people and resources involved. So please consider getting involved, becoming a member at surfrider.org. Okay, without further ado, it's always my pleasure to have a conversation and spend time with Matt Warshaw, and it's my honor to share it with you here today. My name is David Scales for Surf Splendor. I hope you enjoy.
Surf Splendor.
I've said this absolutely publicly, but privately as well, maybe even to you, that I feel like you're the best person for the job that you're doing with the Encyclopedia of Surfing. You're obviously unique knowledge set, but you're also methodical. You're objective, as I suppose anybody could be. But it is still one person's perspective. And so the
Yeah.
question is, what are the risks of having surf history chronicled by a single man?
I don't think I've ever uh it's a great question. So first I'll actually start I'll say let me tell a story to answer your question.
Okay.
Um the history book before mine that people mostly would buy was Nat Young's History of Surfing. Do you remember that, or have you seen it?
Yes.
There was a few editions of it, and it probably has sold 25 times more than the book I did. But when History of Surfing came out in when did History of Surfing come out? I don't know. I think around 2010.
Okay.
I sent an email to Nat asking him some question about, you know, do you have a contact information for Bob McTavish or something like that? Nat and I have emailed now and then, and he got right back to me, all caps, the most hardest I've ever been flamed, saying, "You motherfucker, you have the audacity to get in touch with me after you stole my book." And he was pissed. He said, "Fuck you, never call me back again. Never email. No, this is it." And the quote, the thing was, I, his book was called History of Surfing. My book was called History of Surfing. It wasn't like I was reinventing the wheel. He was furious. And years go by, and this is the thing about Nat Young that was so it's always been interesting because he's such a giant, just blowhard, and he's so emotional always. But Nat's always been also good about examining himself, and then he'll adjust or something. He's not super, super, he's always said, he's always had the ability to say, I did this, I was wrong, I've changed my mind. He's done this on a few other things as well. But at some point he was coming through uh, California, maybe I was still living down there, and he sent me a really apologetic email saying, Matt, I owe you a big apology. I'm so sorry for what I said. I'd love it if we can, keep talking. And he said, I've come to realize that two people can do a history of surfing, which is funny in itself because up till that point he just thought he could do it. So
Right.
he realized that two people could do a book called History of Surfing. So he was gracious. It was gracious of him to do that, and we went out actually and had lunch in Oceanside not long after that, and everything was fine. The reason I told that story though is that me calling a book History of Surfing doesn't mean it's the history of surfing. It's um, uh, and then everything I've done, it's been really awkward having my website called Encyclopedia of Surfing because initially it was just the book Encyclopedia of Surfing online, A through Z stuff. And then a few years later, I put History of Surfing in there, and then I started putting a bunch of interviews that I had, and then the Sunday Joint, and but it's all under the title of Encyclopedia of Surfing. But that whole big site called Encyclopedia of Surfing, which is so much more, is so much filtered through me, just like you're saying. It's so biased, even if I'm not trying to be, even when I'm trying to not be biased. I grew up at a certain time in a certain place. I have certain things that I know a lot about, other things that I don't know much about. I don't know much about or care that much about surfboard design. So if Nick Carroll were doing a history of surfing or a website like mine, Nick's would be, I think, a lot different, and equally valuable, probably much better for people who want to know more about surfboards than mine is. I'm always mostly on personalities and people. So I never made a claim that my, my version is the definitive version. Um, so I don't know, is that and I want to believe that's sort of built into it, that people would just understand that I don't make that claim. But I could do a little segue here into why I'm leaving EOS and going to this thing, EOS Archive. In part is so just really quickly, Encyclopedia of Surfing is the site that's been up for, I guess, 10 or 12 years now or something. EOS Archive, the thing I've been ranting on about and raising money for the past 3 years, is a second website. And all EOS Archive is really is just it'll be a big digital library. So I want to go off, and we've already built the structure for it, and we've already begun digitizing old magazines. And it's all this old stuff, old magazines, 60s and 70s, it'll go through right through, but that that is not digitized, that AI doesn't know anything about. and that I don't think anybody's going to bother doing it unless I do it. So um, if somebody else is going to come along and do a history of surfing, that I can maybe in the future email them and say, "Fuck you for doing my fucking book." Then that person needs to have the resources that I have, some of which
Yeah.
are behind me, and that's really hard. So
Yeah.
um, I'm going to try and get all those magazines and some of the old surf books and the movies and the videotapes and get everything digitized and keyworded and put up. So that isn't going to be a thing that is flavored or slanted or biased by me, except it'll whatever I can get my hands on first will go up first. So, but that takes me as the that takes sort of my slant on things quite a bit out of it, I hope.
Y-
EOS, the original site, when I'm done with it, and right now I'm not done with it, I'm just sort of putting it on the back burner while I do archive. But when I am really done with it, that's just going to get sort of dipped in resin and it's done. It'll be like a thing that'll be online, I hope, for a long time, but it'll just exist as a big, really sloppy, unfinished thing that I spent decades working on. Shaggy. There's parts of EOS that I love. There's parts of it that are super out of date at this point. I love all the Sunday joints, but it's going to be done. Like I'm not. There's not going to be a continuation of EOS. The archive site is something that if I get struck down on the way up to get a Big Mac's burger when Teddy's working, somebody else can step in and do it.
Right.
So it's specifically designed to be handed off. So that's the
Well,
project.
well, you shared your opinion in your Nat about Nat Young in your Nat Young story a minute ago, but if I go to the EOS's listing for Nat Young, none of that color is in there. It's
It would
obviously,
be it would be in I mean where that would go if I ever did it would be in a Sunday joint, and that's
yeah,
and that's why this and that's why Sunday joint's been the best part of EOS, I
yeah,
think.
I see. I could see the siloed different styles like
Right.
you're, yeah. But so my question though is, as the follow-up to the first is, has there been anybody who's gotten short shrift from you on EOS
Oh my
because
God.
of you, intentionally or unintentionally, maybe?
So short shrifted. So for one thing, when I did the book, which it's just that big, whatever, it's a big 1,000-page book, right?
Yeah.
But before I wrote a word in the book, I had every entry A through Z, people, places, events, things, boards basically, and every entry A through Z had a word length attached to it because I had to sort of math it all out to get it. I wanted to aim for the size that it wanted to be. I didn't want to write double what I needed to do. So for every single entry, there was a word value from 50 up to 1,000, so the biggest entries were, I think maybe for Duke and a couple others, I might have gone to 2,000 or something. And sure enough, when I did the first draft, I'd done the math right on a spreadsheet and it came out at the size that they wanted. So that's great. It came out in a way when the book came out in 2003, that was the purest, best version of EOS. I was up to date. Everything felt sort of balanced and weighed out. So then I push all that stuff into the website. And the minute I start tinkering with it, with the text, all that goes out the window because I could. So I ended up rewriting quite a few of the major entries. But then I might end up doing one that I'd forgotten about doing way back when. And because I'm in a different medium, I probably did I think I did an entry for like Vicky Flaxman or something, the Malibu surfer from the 50s. And, you know, because online I can go as long as I want. That I go super long. So there's some pages of interesting, really unheralded surfers that are longer than pages for people who, when I was writing the book, were 1,000 word top level things. So it's all really uneven now. And I don't know that that's going to be hard to sort of explain or figure out to somebody um, at some point. It,
What
but it,
was there anybody who's reached out to you to give you grief about the way that you've written about them in the Encyclopedia of Surfing?
um, yeah, but I'm not going to say it because it'll just bring on it'll a few people, but I'm not going to say
Okay.
it because it'll just bring on more shit down
Yeah.
my way. And I'll tell you one person who was upset and justifiably was Dennis Jarvis,
Mm,
my old great friend and team writer and my sponsor and someone who who I've known since high school. Um, and Dennis wasn't in the print version of EOS, I think because at some point w when I was mapping the whole site out, I also sort of mapped things out by occupation. I wanted to have a certain number of shapers and a certain number of photographers. I mean, there was a point where everything was just all calculated and in a way that made it so it didn't, it sort of kept it on track. But I kind of hit my quota for shapers at some point, and Dennis didn't make it, and Dennis probably didn't make it because I know him so well.
yeah.
And I thought, God, everyone's going to say, look at Warshaw putting his buddy in there. So a few years ago, I remember Dennis was online saying something like, God, I can't believe I'm not in my best friend's book. And, and I was just going, oh, fuck. And all of a sudden, the Dennis supporters and I had to think about it for a bit. And I thought, Dennis is right. He should be in this thing. Me knowing him doesn't mean that he shouldn't not be in.
Right.
Um, so I went in and did a page on Dennis, and I'm stoked it's in there, and I probably owe him an apology for not having him in the print version as well. So that was a case where that was on me.
Totally.
There's been a lot of like pioneering surfers from other nations that I thought I got taken care of when I did the book version, but since I was researching the book in 2000, 2001, 2002, so much more stuff has been published and put out there about early surf history from other nations that I'm also really, the Encyclopedia of Surfing is really lack on pioneering surfers from other places apart from all the usual ones. So, and I just have to say, look, I did the best I could then, and somebody else has to come along and do their version of history of surfing or Encyclopedia of Surfing.
I'm wondering, or I would imagine too, it's also, even if you wanted to research some of that stuff, primary sources are so thin or unverifiable.
But that's what the archive project is for.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So did you go on? Did you see that the last joint where I linked to the pilot project for archive was I got I was able to get from a collector friend of mine all 8 issues of this magazine called Peterson Surfing from 63 and 64. There was a ton of surf magazines in the 60s during the craze that like 3 issues were made or 5 issues, and this one was 8 issues, and it seemed like a perfect thing for me to practice the whole workflow of scanning, making masters, making web things, and getting it all done. So all 8 issues of Peterson's are on the site right now and won't be for much longer because at some point this is a huge hassle that's going to be a big part of next year. I don't have yet rights for all this stuff, and it's going to be a nightmare chasing all that down. But the preservation part is done. In other words, the 8 issues of Peterson's that are really falling apart, they were it was a crap magazine. They're all preserved on huge 100 meg scans that are all up,
Amazing.
so that's all done. But um, you talk about primary source stuff, and like it was fascinating going through this magazine, which Peterson's, I don't know, you probably know this, but there was a publisher named Robert Peterson in LA, and he'd already become sort of famous because he did Hot Rod Magazine and Guns and Ammo and Tiger Beat, and I think he did Motor Trend. That was one of his big ones. So Peterson's had this whole little mini empire going in 63. And here comes surfing, and they just go, that's the new thing. And the first issue of Peterson's in December 63 is 54 pages. And I went and looked at some old Hot Rod magazines, and they just took the same page templates and just put in surf material. Like they
Yeah.
already had the templates, and because because they were just taking a flyer on surfing, there's no ads in the first issue. They just put it out there because they already had this whole machine going. First, that's how big the sort of the surf trend they thought was this is going to be so big. Let's get out there and get in on it. And it didn't pan out. They only did 8 issues, but it's fascinating to see again for a future surf historian what was really sort of this what was sort of the trends and the sub-trends of surfing in 64 mostly. And one of the things that blows my mind, because we just think we're living in the kookiest era of all time right now, right? In 63 and 4, what everybody who was interested in making money off surfing, similar to like what sort of like not everybody, but sort of similar to like the wave pool thing now, the big push in 63 and 4 was wake surfing. So surfing behind boats and not what's it called now? Freeboarding or what? There's a name for it when like, that's like it's a whole thing now, right? Where
Yeah. I mean, I just think of it as wake surfing. Maybe there's a different term.
yeah, I think yeah, there's but don't they do flips and shit? That's all kind of a crazy
Yeah.
thing, and they have contests. So this is just taking your board out and holding onto a rope. There's a little wave, and then you let go of the rope, and you can just ride it forever. And
Yeah.
you can see Hobie's in on it.
Yep. Some of
Everybody
his marketing stuff was shot that way.
huge, and there's articles like every fourth article in Peterson's is about wake surfing. And they're making board models designed for wake surfing, whatever that means. And it's so lame. It's just so incredibly lame. And why are they pushing that? Because if they can get everybody surfing, so they did a
Hmm.
whole article on this place. I'm not sure where this is called Lake Havasu, which I think is in California somewhere.
Yeah.
And so they did a whole article on Lake Havasu, the way they would do an article on, say, Malibu. Like,
Yeah.
this is like a new spot to go. And they just thought that if we can take this thing that otherwise has to be done on the beach and we can put it in the lakes, then we've got the whole country to sell boards to. And that's
Yeah.
that's all it is. So
Well,
we were lame. The sport was super lame for a long time, not long time, but a few years there in the 60s, it was just embarrassing.
I'm sure you've identified this too, but I have my own collection of mags from back in the 60s
Yeah,
and all the way through. And pick up any random one, and the stories and the subject matter is the same that it was in the 90s if I pick up a 90s mag as it is today if I go to stabmag.com. I mean, some of what you talked about,
right,
they're still talking about, as you mentioned today. Articles about it's getting too crowded,
right,
a
right,
101 section about don't ditch your board, you kook.
right, right, right,
Travel log stories, of course, and then the letters from the readers are the same, where
right,
it's somebody writing in complaining they're not covering enough women's surfing,
right.
moms complaining about the things that the magazine is glorifying, literally from the very earliest days of the magazines, and we're still having the same conversations.
Right. So that's incredible. I mean, so when I go back to 63, um, there is a little bit of a difference. There is some of it is the same, but I'm looking at there was something I was going to read you from so back to that Peterson stuff. There was the guys who were editing Peterson's, I don't think they even surfed. I think that they just thought, oh, how hard could it be? We'll do this. But there's a lot of flop pictures, so you know that somebody's not really paying attention. There's one of the covers is Sunset Beach flopped. One of them is Lanada Bay flopped, so the guy's going left. and they're so ready to bust out to say that this is to announce that they found a new spot. So like they did an article on Hollywood by the Sea, an incredible new wave that you've never seen before, just 2 hours north of LA, right? So they're just saying, look at us, we're showing you this new spot. And they just wanted to tell everyone that they were going to be the ones that, and I guess it just wasn't it wasn't in anyone's. I don't know if you were if you surfed Hollywood by the Sea in '64, maybe you didn't care that Peterson Surfing was telling everybody about it. I would guess they probably were. So it was
Absolutely, yeah.
so there was some different sort of stuff. It also, like you say, there's also a lot of similar stuff.
Was Dick Graham responsible for Peterson, or was he
Yeah,
editor?
how did you know that? That's good. He was
Just because, well, I interviewed him a long time ago, and that's where I think I had heard of it before,
well,
but during that interview, I researched
well,
it more.
Dick Graham founded Internet or Peterson Surfing, and then the next year broke away and founded the surfing that you and I know as surfing. So Dick
Right.
Graham was was busy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, in regard to current media that's being produced, surf media, I don't know how closely you follow it, but what do you identify as being kind of the healthiest of surf media or the least healthy?
Um, I have a hard time I have a hard time with that question with what I care about, sort of keeping up with. I don't know. I don't think I'm pretty out of touch in general. When I say I haven't left the house much, it's been EOS and archive. I I think that this will sound like smoke blowing, but it seems to me that you're podcasting at a sort of at the level that you're doing it with the number of shows that you're doing for the cost you're doing it, I'm guessing anyway, seems to be an actual model that works. Like Surf Podcast seems to be a healthy thing. I don't know what's happening over at Stab, but Stab seems to be the only game, online that counts these days for I actually go to Beach Grit. It's hard for me to read Beach Grit these days on my phone because the pop-ups are so it's such a I have to sort of hold my phone with my fingers over all the ads and all the but I still
The user experience is bad.
not great, yeah. And then the thing I like the most, but you wouldn't bet on it being forever is Surfing World out of Australia.
Got it right there.
I love it,
Yeah,
you know.
they do an incredible job.
But gosh, would you bet on a print title? I mean, that's a labor of love, I think.
I
I
would
hope
not,
not.
no, I would not bet on it. Did you watch in the last 48 hours How Surfers Get Paid episode that came out on Stab?
No, but I hear those are all great.
So you haven't watched any of them. You haven't been following the series.
I kind of don't I don't care that much, dude. I just can't.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean I don't care. I mean, I'm really careful with how much time I spend with surfing apart from
Yeah.
the job that I do because it already feels like I'm still in this constant discussion with myself when I'm doing the work that I do about, God, did I really spend all my life doing this one thing and was it worth it? And so I always come back around to saying it was, but it's always still like pretty close.
Um,
6, 7, as the kids say.
God, please do not. Um, so I'll cut that out for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
You're welcome. Um, the reason I asked that, and you're actually kind of discussing a lot of a theme of what I was trying to build questions around for this conversation, which is um, how much of culture is informed by the content that's being created, or how much is the content creating the culture itself. And
Yeah,
I think that
right.
I think that the EOS is at a point where it is going to create the culture moving forward if it isn't already.
I
Um,
don't know. I don't, the other thing I don't pay any attention to besides basically surfing is I'm not paying enough attention to AI. And I just can't get my head around how fast that's going and what it seems to be doing uh, to sort of truth and to believing your own eyes and to shaping things. So um, it's not that it feels a little bit like my small effort I can do to sort of counter that, to counter things that it's never gonna win. But I don't like the old guy here. I don't like the idea I don't like the idea of anybody thinking that surfing should always be done in the ocean. Surfing should always be
Perfect.
difficult to do. So here, I don't like the technology in terms of the wave pools. And I know that, it's a fun thing for a lot of people, it's just sort of a fun thing to do. And I suppose with when I say I don't like wave pools, what I really mean is I don't like Kelly's wave. I don't like the idea that anybody made a wave better than the best wave that I ever surfed in the ocean. I don't like the idea that that has become um, that long perfect wave has become this sort of, you know, become something that people think about and want to go do because the only thing that surfing ever had going for it was it's done in the ocean. And corollary to that is that it's hard. And Kelly's wave sort of really ruins both of that. It's a perfect wave that you can go pay for, and it makes it really easy. I mean, if you can get placed into a tube by what's his name, Ramona, or what's his not Ramona,
Raymana.
Ramona, what is that? Then you're in the tube. That took me 8 years to learn how to do what that 8-year-old kid is now being able to do because someone's put him in there.
Yeah. Did you
And
see?
and I guess any sort of questions that I have asked that have been sort of a Google AI assist answer to something isn't quite right. It's not, sometimes it can get pretty close, but it's not right, and it's not colorful for sure. So I can push back a little bit on that. I push back on the wave pool thing by saying what I've just said to you is that we're supposed to surf in the ocean. Not not out of me being a crusty old guy. That's the way I did it. But that's the whole point is to get, to drive or walk down there, change and change the medium that you're in and put yourself in this incredible place and then ride waves
Yeah.
and have all this misfortune and weird bits of fluky good luck. That was the whole thing. So my pushback is I'll always say if anybody asks me, that's what I think surfing is, and I think that's I hope that lasts a little longer for people, not just me, but others saying the same thing. And then I can do the same. I can push back a little against, I suppose, the AIification of surfing by, you know, taking the trouble to scan, magazines like this so people can see this is what we were like in 1974, and
I've never seen that cover.
that's a surfing special issue, yeah.
Hilarious. The Comedy
And,
Annual 74 for those listening, not watching.
and they only made they only did the one, but we all there was a style to what we did, and it had nothing to do with really with contest or with other people's take on things, which is why I love Raglan Surf Report so much because that's someone who's just doing something because they surf. Like every bit of that thing, as funny as it is, feels like it could have only sort of come from a surfer. Just the way that you held up an issue a little while ago with a John Severson cover, that only could have come from a surfer. And same thing with with beach grit. You know, that's two surfers doing something, and it's all got a little bit of uh, I don't know. I don't want to say I hate the word cheekiness, but it's always got something that's light, and you're obsessed with
Irreverent.
this thing, and it's kind of taken over your life, but you're also going to hopefully have fun with it. And you know, I always call it a sport because what else are you going to call it? But it's not it still doesn't feel like that to me. So
Yeah.
whatever we're going to call it, I mean, whatever Supreme Court justice said, you know it when you see it. And there's some of it just feels way more real to me than others. That's all. And so I would like to keep as best I can for as long as I can, sort of putting that forward out there. And that comes through with a lot of these old magazines that I'll be putting up.
So, um, in reference to a lot of what you said, but also in reference to you saying you spent your life doing this encyclopedia project, and it'd be nice if it, meant something. Um, that episode of How Surfers Get Paid is specifically, it's called the style economy. That's what this one episode is about. And I'm like, okay, so they're going to be discussing style. What it ended up being was more about surfboard design than anything else. And then, of course, the types of boards people are riding affects the style of surfing that they're doing. They did very little discussion about clothing brands and or the cut and the colors of the clothing that people were wearing. And so I thought that was it was really well done. I liked it a lot, but I thought that idea that you're right, it is just about the surfing that's being done in the water and about the board design and how that translates to aesthetic, and that influences everything else. So back to, is it the brands and the cult or the industry that is then influencing, because the brands do hope to create influence through
Right.
marketing to sell product. So it almost looks like doom and gloom when ABG owns all the big five surf brands and is making decisions from a boardroom in New York that are going to affect surf culture. Oh no. But it's like, I don't think that actually really has much influence at all. I think it's always the act of riding the wave that will go viral and affect everything else.
I mean, if you think at this point that that anything's coming off the things that I do like in surf culture, like we're talking about. So I like Surf Splendor, I like Raglan Surf Report, I like Beach Grit, and I like what I do. How small is that? How microscopic is that in terms of the commercial part of surfing or in terms of setting any, like, we're all so tiny. And I don't think we're having any effect anymore. Whereas the Palos Verdes or the South Bay Surf Club guys or the Manhattan Beach Surf Club guys who went out to in the 50s and bought those surplus navy whites for 6 bits or whatever it cost, and they cut the navy white, they cut those pants off. Navy whites were these sailor pants, and you cut them off just above or just below the knee, and you wear them really low on the hip because that was kind of sexy or something. And you see these pictures of these guys with their basically they've just invented baggies. They've just invented a kind of trunk that's low on the hips and long. And that's a style that they just did it was super cheap. They thought it looked cool to keep it low on the hip, and they were long, so your inside of your legs didn't get chafed by wax. And that look was amazing. And that look still is amazing. So that it was invented is literally from the beach up. And tons of other stuff happened that is similar. But who now that surfs, where now would that even come from? Everything now that gets put out there seems like it's being directed or I don't know where I don't know where the style sort of centers are surf wise, but surfers also were doing that completely, I think, with sort of on their own and not paying attention to all this other stuff in culture. I think we were I think we were a little bit more siloed back then as a group. And now I think there's more sort of intermingling of other kind of cultures and surfers trying to pretend that they are trying to be more like music stars or movie stars or something like that. It's all maybe I don't know. I could be really off about that, but I don't. You you tell me, David. Like what is cool surf culture in 2025? Is there anything out there? Like what's
I feel disconnected from it personally, even though I'm discussing it weekly, ad nauseum, some might say. Um, I think, you know, from my perspective, it seems like it's not about the youth anymore. I know a lot
right?
of 40
That
something plus
100.
who are
That's so
super,
true.
super
Right.
hardcore. But again, that's my demographic. So maybe I'm just in an echo chamber because if you look at the stats, it actually doesn't verify that. I go on YouTube and look at Jamie O'Brien's latest video, was posted yesterday. He has 700,000 views in one day. And I'm like, what the hell? And I try to watch it. Within 30 seconds, I'm offended by it, because it's so obnoxious. So there are, I think, substantial numbers who are engaging with surfing in an entirely different way than I am, or than I even
Right.
think is
Right.
relevant. And
Right.
but he's making a killer. He's making millions of dollars a year, and they're probably buying his product. And I don't go hang out where they're hanging out, so I don't ever see that product. I would think who would buy a Stay Psyched T-shirt or whatever, but maybe you go to the Irvine Spectrum and there's a bunch of 12-year-olds running around in it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to, I always wonder
But
like it always my litmus test on this kind of thing about what seems sort of real and not real is would this person be doing it if there was no money in it or if there was no camera on them? Would this
yeah,
person still be doing the thing? Um, so who knows what would Jamie Bryan O'Brien be doing at what is he in his early 40s or something or
I mean, late 30s for sure. I
so
think I mean,
he's got I also respect when people get a hustle, I mean Greg Knoll would say that everything he did in surf down to getting the trunk stripes. So, this great hardcore surfer, and Greg Knoll would always say it was just all about making money so he could keep surfing.
yeah,
So at some level, you got to respect that. I mean, Mickey Dora was in those dopey movies. I love those movies actually. He was in those movies that everybody back then said were dopey because he got paid whatever he got paid more money um, to be an extra or to be a surf stunt double for Fabian than he made from his signature model board is my guess. So I
I don't
respect that.
begrudge. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
begrudge Jamie at all. I think I've realized I have a personality type. Not everybody loves me, I'm sure. And I am attracted to certain personality types. And just because you're a surfer doesn't mean that we're going to have attraction to one another. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we'd all be surfers and we could all like different things in people. No big deal. Good for
But
him.
there's, that I love I don't think he does it anymore, but why am I spacing on Raglan Surf Report guy's name?
Luke
I
Cederman.
thought didn't Luke for a while have a thing have like a sort of a spin-off almost where he was doing little things that were a spin-off on Jamie's podcast where it was like did you ever see those? He did those ones
I
and
don't think
he
so.
had a sidekick and
Oh yeah.
they would go surf.
Yes. Yes. He still does the podcast with his sidekick. It's the same guy, but you're
Right.
right. The skits that they were doing were incredibly well written.
But I thought that was riffing on Jamie's thing. And it was just, it
It
was making
was.
fun of that insane. And it was always like a lot of product placement and stuff and all that. And,
I totally forgot about those, and
yeah,
those were the funniest.
yeah. Well,
They
they're all
were
good.
so good.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know what you get. Like Luke to me feels like sort of a small corner of surf culture right now that I love. And it's really important for me to still feel that because I feel so separate from most of it. But when I find something that's modern and happening right now that I still look at and go, God, I love this. And I'm so glad that I've never met Luke, but I'm so glad that I can count myself as a person that does the same thing that he does. That,
Yeah.
EOS in a sense is coming from a place similar to what he's doing because I'm not making much money and I don't think he's making much money, but we both love surfing and we're both expressing it, in this way that we can. And so I love that. It makes me feel like I haven't lost touch completely. I still
You,
feel like part of it.
yeah, you clearly have not. You can't, it's impossible for any of us to track everything that's happening in surfing right now. Um,
But so I really actively dislike most of it. I mean, I really just don't want to know about any of it almost. I
okay.
didn't watch any, I don't think I watched any contests this year except the finals. I just didn't want to, I couldn't, I couldn't even get on the beach grit thread and that's the only time I ever go on and get into the thread, into the comment section and shoot the shit because I feel like I've been making the same sort of comments about the same things that are wrong with it for 10 years now, and nothing ever gets sort of better about it. If the surf's good and that can supersede how awful not the whole presentation is, but a lot of it is, I'm happy to watch. Or if it's the finals day and every heat's knocking somebody out, I love watching that too. And by the way, put me down in the camp for I am very much pro finals day. I want to see a thing. I could care less if someone goes from first to second or fifth to first. That's just it's so much more fun. Anyway, that's a different thing.
Well, I don't know how much you monitor the data analysis of EOS and where traffic's coming from or where they're spending time on the site.
Not a bit.
Oh, okay. Well, then forget these next few questions. Do you have any idea how many people under 40 are visiting the site or what percentage?
3% or two, I don't know.
Is that
Small.
just a
It's all
guess or is that based on data?
total, no, total guess.
Okay.
David, I've never looked at the numbers. When EOS first went up in maybe 2013, for a while I would look at those numbers. And then I realized I was already, just after a few weeks of doing that, I was trying to figure out how to make the numbers go up.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Well, one of the bits that I would be interested in is if you've seen cultural priorities or interests shifting over time, people spending more time interested in women's, surfing or a given era of surfing or something like that.
Um, I would say that there's less interest now in uh, this is not really answering your question directly. There's less interest now, I think, in revisiting all the same people that we've been celebrating for so long.
Yeah.
So when you go somewhere, I can't think of the name of this woman surfer who I did a few bits on. She was in her 70s or something, and she was like one of the UK's first surfers. And she was this she's still out there boogie boarding, and she's just this sort of you know uh, funny older woman surfer who was out there really early on and is still out there on a boogie board. And I found this picture of her and Roy Russell from maybe 15 years ago, and both of them are shooting the finger at the camera. And she was sort of this local legend in Cornwall, I think. And I I got into her and I did a couple of things on her, and people love that. And she wasn't a great surfer. She just was there at the right time. And there's some amazing photos of her surfing with a red rubber cap on with this one piece, um, smiling. And I think people respond to that. I had a good response to a lot of things I did a few years ago, and I'm still doing it, where if you get sort of found film of people skateboarding or surfing. I had sort of a found footage thing of this surf trip, this 8 millimeter family shot, film of these kids. They must have been 15 or 16, loading up the family car and driving out of the valley to Malibu. And they get to First Point Malibu, and it's 1 to 2 feet. sort of gray, and they just run down there and they put all their stuff on and they go out and they're just all paddling for these tiny little waves and standing up and falling over, and they all get out and they're all got their towels around them and the camera and like that kind of stuff is I love seeing that versus seeing more Dora Johnny Fane at Malibu on the same day. And that got a pretty great response because anyone who was ever young going on a surf trip and not getting great waves and having a ball with your friends, I think responds to that.
I was I've got it right here actually. I was flipping through this book the other day. Don James,
Hmm.
1936 to 1942,
Yeah, yeah,
Sano to Point Doom photo
yeah. I love
book,
that book.
early surf photography book.
Yep.
In equal percentage of the photos is what you're talking about as there are surfing photos.
Right.
And here's an example.
That's the stuff. Absolutely. So,
And yeah, I think and actually the reason why now I'm remembering the reason why I was going through this was I was interviewing Jeff Devine, and I was thinking of that about his photos too, is like I remember seeing a lot of, lifestyle, for lack of a better term, photos of his in the way back in the day. And to me, it captured the culture as much and
right.
represented the culture almost more than the surfing itself did.
Uh,
And
could
and it
not agree
tells
more.
and it tells story.
Right.
And so when I was growing up and flipping through the magazines, it was like I was taken into all the backstory behind what was happening outside of the
When
surf,
you end up looking at the surf trunks and what was the trunk design like? End up looking at the cars everyone's driving, and you end up looking. I always those divine photos, the best known ones. I never get tired of seeing boards without stickers on them. So you see, especially obviously the old lightning bolt boards, but anybody walking down the beach, with a pair of Catons on and no vest or no wetsuit. So just, I mean, Sammy Hawk walking down the beach in white trunks and a white board just looks like, God, the pictures of him surfing huge pipeline on a whiteboard with white trunks are also amazing. But I look at, you look at a picture of Sammy Hawk or Tiger Sparrow or something, um, clean boards, no stickers, wearing the whatever trunks that they probably went to the surf shop to buy, because I don't even know if anybody was getting, and yeah, I think that, so that gets a little bit back to what I was saying, or what you were saying earlier about sort of when we were doing it ourselves and making up our own sort of culture, and nobody used that word. It was just, you know, that's all coming up organically out of the off the beach and out of the, the uh, out of your closet, whatever you wanted to sort of throw on to wear, and none of it seemed dictated to
it was
us.
function. It was all about function.
It was function, but it was also a bit of style. I think when those guys, again, back at the Manhattan Beach Surf Club, were making a decision to make those to get those Army surplus shorts. They made a decision to get the waistband an inch bigger, so they hung low. You didn't want it. They didn't want it up high like the movie stars wore it or something. You want to have that stuff hanging low so you can see the hip bones and just look anyway.
Uh, Tangential, because you mentioned Sam Hawk. Who's the first guy to go backdoor? Do you know? Don't make a joke, dude.
Sorry. It's never not funny. Yeah, I do know. I wrote about him in EOS. He's a New
Who?
Zealander. I can't fucking think of his name. He has pictures of himself in '66 riding backdoor by himself. Fuck, what's his name? I'm in touch with him still. He's such a cool guy. He was living down there. He'd never surfed pipeline before. And he said one afternoon, Jock was out there by himself, and he and Jock were just sitting out there. And this guy whose name I can't forget, uh, regular footer, watched Jock pull into the tube, and Jock was really fun to surf with. Jock talked a lot when he was surfing. He would do a commentary about his own stuff, and I guess this guy just wanted to get tubed the way Jock had just done, and he just sort of started going right. And then furthermore, there's a guy on the beach, if not that first session later on, and there's amazing photos of him from I think 66 surfing backdoor. And I'm sure he was first. It wasn't called backdoor. Bruce Faluzzi from Florida named it backdoor about 2 years after that.
What's the story
That's
behind
actually on
that?
EOS. All that's on EOS.
Okay, what's the story behind naming it Backdoor?
Uh, I don't know, but I ran the story. That's
Okay.
Bruce's story is on
Okay.
the site about where I don't know, I don't know if he gave any kind of reason. It just said something like pipeline's back door, and it was 2 words. So,
I mean, it makes logical sense that you're
right.
backdooring the section, so maybe it doesn't go deeper than that. But I will add the name, the New Zealander's name. Once you think of it, send it to me. Even after we're done recording, I will add it in post production so we get it in
Okay.
there because that's
He's
important.
a great guy. I mean, he's a lot of fun. He doesn't take any huge credit for it. He goes, I was a pretty good surfer, but I just liked it was this thing that nobody else was doing, and there were some great waves, and he even did it, and it wasn't small backdoor. It was it was pretty solid, and he just did doing it by himself.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, this conversation came up with Jeff Devine, which is why I mentioned asked you about it, and he wasn't certain, but he did mention a name, so it might be that guy's name, and it was a name that I wasn't familiar with. Um, and then Jeff Hackman shortly thereafter, and Sam Hawk. And so he said they then kind of crept a little bit further down the line to off the wall. And so when Divine figured out what they were up to, he moved down the beach to try to shoot into the barrel of them. And then once they saw him in response, they started like intentionally having terrible style, like a squat stance and put their arms in weird positions because they didn't want photos of them surfing that wave to run in the magazine and then other people would get hip to it.
that's funny. Jeff is such a treasure. Jeff remembers all that stuff so well, and he tells the stories great, and it's great. Let's take a quick break, but I have the name for you when I get
Okay.
back.
Okay.
I'll be right
What
back.
look at you teasing.
Well, yeah, no,
Teasing the
no,
next
thanks.
section. You're a pro. Big reveal. First
Here we
guy
go.
to go at backdoor, I should
So
say.
I'm just changing screens here, but you can still, I mean, I feel like I'm a little kid who if you put the blanket in front of me, I think you're gone. But so if I'm going to switch over right now to a different screen, but you'll still see me, not that it matters, right? Okay.
I can see it doesn't matter.
So I posted this in 2023. Phil Bonham, like John Bonham, but Phil, surfing's original backdoor man.
Amazing. I
So
don't think that's the same
he
name.
actually wrote me a whole letter about it. Shit, do I want to read this to you? I mean, it says, enjoyed your last post. This is from Phil to me. Thought I'd mention a brief experience I had at Pipeline in 1966. I was never any good on the left, except one day when it was peaky and easier to get into. Nobody was out except me and my friend Neil. Hemmings paddled out. I didn't make a single wave that afternoon. I did better at Backdoor, except we didn't know what it was called. I don't remember where we walked in from in order to access the beach. It wasn't Iukai, and we knew where Pipeline was, so it wasn't right there in front. Anyway, I surfed it alone every time except once, and that guy was going left. My board was a 10-3 Hobie hot dog shape. It was bigger than I wanted, but I got it for cheap. At Backdoor, it took me a few wipeouts to learn how to make the drop, but eventually I figured it out and I had a great time out there. And I'll send you these pictures. God, I'm looking at a picture of him on a wave at Backdoor that's way over double overhead.
Unbelievable.
So he was obvious, and one where he's actually pulling in the tube. So yeah, he was, he's this guy. It's just amazing to me, like partly, why it's so lame that Nat Young would. I don't think about Nat Young that often, but history is always changing. There's always new stuff coming up. So much. If if I were to do a revised version of History of Surfing now, I mean, there's so much new stuff has come up. Nobody knows about Phil Bonham. I mean, now
No.
we do, and EOS people have for a little bit, but Sam Hawk was the first person or one of the first. No, Bruce Valuzzi would have. So Bruce Valuzzi did his article, I think, in '68 about Backdoor, and then Sam Hawk, I feel like, was one of the first people who did it, where he kind of stamped his signature on it.
Right.
You know.
Well, another kind of historical thing I would like to that conversation I had with Jeff that I would like for you to chime in on is just what about women's surf photography? Who were among the first?
Um, Gianna Proper, Gary Proper's wife, was maybe the first one I can think of. I don't know what to say. I don't know much about Gianna, and I kind of get the feeling, well, actually, one of the first was John Severson's wife. Louise took a lot of photos. So every photo you see of John Severson surfing, which there's a lot of, were probably taken by Louise. And so on one hand, you're going, well, that's cool. She's a surf photographer. But on the other hand, it really feels a little bit to me like John said, "Hey, honey, take some pictures of me while I surf." You know,
Again, something we still do to this day.
I know. So I get a feeling like that's kind of what was happening with Jana proper. She took some great photos. I don't think she wasn't first, but it's really hard to not want to not want to really put a huge flag up and celebrate Shirley Rogers, because she really, she did it her own way, and she did it. Um, she she was she was just on the beach in Hawaii. I think she was from town, and she'd gone out to the North Shore to hang out with all the sort of surfer boys with her girlfriends. She was probably just out of high school or something, and she said she just got tired of sitting on the beach reading, you know, People magazine or whatever, and she just thought, I'll try shooting photos. And I can't remember, maybe it was Dan Merkel sort of, and Shirley Rogers was going to get advice or help from anybody for two reasons. She was Eddie Rothman's girlfriend, and she was stunning. She was she was in the opening credits of not Hawaii Five-O, of
Mag
Magnum PI. So, and also she was still is so much fun to hang out with. She's really salty and funny, and she got good really quick.
Hmm.
Um, so I think Shirley to me feels like not the first woman to take photos, but you might, if you're going to sort of parse the words or tweak it a little bit, you would say the first woman surf photographer in terms of like really being that was her thing for a few
Yeah.
years.
Um, we talked last year about Joey Hamasaki. You
Yeah.
mentioned her when I asked you a question. That was your response. Are there any other surf characters who disappeared, but that you've always kind of dreamt of tracking down?
There was an incredible surfer from Hawaii named Jackie Eberle, who was maybe the best all-around surfer in the world, or the best all-around surfer in Hawaii at a time when Hawaii was kind of everything. Um, in maybe 65 or 66 or maybe even 67. He was amazing. He was the first guy to do big fades at Waimea. He was a goofy footer, and he would drop in almost left and then do a big turn. He was really good at pipeline, and he dropped out of the scene. And it was one of those things where he OD'd,
Mm.
or he had some bad trips. He had some bad experiences with acid. And I remember um, he was always Fred Hemmings used to always talk about one of the greatest surfers in history is now just derelict living up on a in the crater at somewhere with his brains like a dried prune. And Fred would, because Fred was such an anti-drug fascist, you know. Um, and I think what happened with Jackie, and I think the same with Ron Stoner, is that, you know, the drugs are I think probably secondary to other mental health stuff that comes up. Um, Ron's case, it was schizophrenia, and maybe the same thing with Jackie Eberle. And I think that Jackie Eberle, you know, sort of eventually became came out of that and is I think still alive. And I would have liked to have talked to him. I'm not chasing anybody down anymore to talk, but I would like to find out. Nobody sort of he became like the poster boy for anti-drug people.
Oh,
Um,
really?
Sort of. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, Eberle was the cautionary tale kind of guy. And that seems unfair because my guess is it wasn't. My guess is with most of those people, it's not the drugs. The drugs are just sort of a secondary thing or an accelerant for some other underlying thing, you know. But I was always kind of pissed off. Hemmings was always wanting to beat up on somebody who's having problems with whatever they were having problems with.
Um, I
I'd
didn't know
like to
that.
talk. You
I
know, I'd still love to, before too much time goes by, talk again with Barry Kanayapuni, but that's just because out of you know the world's oldest fanboy, like he's the last guy that I would fangirl over is Barry
really.
Kanayapuni. He was always my favorite, and it's a kind of surfing that I almost think you have to be my age to um have it get up all in you because I remember Lewis Samuels asking me about favorite surfers, and I mentioned Barry Kanayapuni, and Lewis watched some of the footage and didn't get it. He didn't, you know, the style didn't appeal to him at all. So it's a style of surfing that Barry has that I think you almost have to have been a kid, or not a kid. You had to have sort of be an impressionable sort of surfer in the 60s and early 70s to fully kind of get where or appreciate what he was sort of doing out there and how different it was and how and his style, Barry Kanayapuni's style of surfing wasn't something really that somebody else picked up on and did it. Like there's not he doesn't really have a he didn't really his style didn't really develop into a different kind of into its own
Yeah.
thing.
What about his style appealed to you? Is it like power Hawaiian power stance kind of a
Well, for
thing?
sure. It has a lot to do with just uh, how he holds his hands and all this kind of hand jive he's doing. And normally I like a minimal thing, but Barry's got this whole kind of jazzy thing sort of going on. And also there's almost no he's not that interested in doing big off the top. So he was famous for having the world's most powerful bottom turn. And one of the things he does that's incredible is he doesn't go onto the flats very far to do a turn. He would start his turn really early at the base of the wave, sometimes even when he was still in the mid face, because he's going that much faster. And so he'd do this incredible turn, and then he would just sort of go up and just kind of stall, and we'd just kind of wait until the wave had stacked up again, and he could just sort of drop back down. So
Mm,
it wasn't so much of surfing now is the bottom turn setting up whatever thing you're going to do up here. And Barry's whole thing was whatever he was doing up here was setting up what he wanted to do off the bottom. And I guess the shorter answer to say is that there's and this sounds kind of fruity a little bit, but I really feel like he's in this sort of conversation with the wave. Like I really feel there's sort of a dance going where he's really sort of listening to and responding to the wave itself. And that I just find it incredibly appealing how he seems to be acting and reacting to whatever the wave's doing. He's not stamping his own sort of thing on it, even though he's doing these just devastating turns. There's something about it that seems back and forth.
I wonder if Lewis would feel differently about that now because
I don't know.
There's so many surfers who are iconic who I didn't appreciate at some point until later in my life. And I've gone through different evolutions in my own
Right,
surfing. I watch Tom Carroll now, and it's the most impressive surfing I've ever seen in my life. But
right,
I remember when I was growing up, he would be in a Quicksilver video, and I'm like, get him off the screen.
right,
Let's see more Kelly.
right, right.
And now to me, it's
Well,
more impressive than Kelly.
there's also a lot of things that it takes a little while when you're looking at classic longboard era surfing that doesn't look like much if you're used to only shortboard, but there's a lot going on with that is hard to appreciate. And maybe until you get older, or maybe until you ride a longboard.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
well, see what you think of Barry's. There's a couple of videos on EOS.
Yeah,
See,
I will. I mean, I know I've seen him surf before, but it never stayed with me. So I'll go back and I'll rewatch it after
but there's
this.
a little, part of that I think is preference. I mean, I also remember, um, Jeff Hackman was a contemporary of Barry's, and they surfed so differently. But you were kind of a little bit on the BK side or the Hackman side a little bit because they were so sort of really, really different. Barry fell off his board all the time, and Jeff
Mm,
never fell off his board. Weeks could go by without Jeff. But the thing with Barry, it's almost like um, you can recognize it. You may be able to recognize it as being really unique and incredible, but not care for it. Like I don't care. I've never liked the Talking Heads, and everyone I know loves the Talking Heads, and I know that's a great band, and I appreciate some of it, but I can't. I don't. I would never put a Talking Heads album on.
yeah.
Um, and I also know that I can listen to. I used to be able to listen to Elvis Costello, the early stuff, all day long, and other people just can't stand his voice or his inflection, they can't listen to it. So it's always been sort of personal, the style stuff.
Music's a great comparison, actually.
BK always got compared to Hendrix, and one of the things I wanted to ask Barry was if he liked Jimi Hendrix. I don't know if he, but they used to. If you went to a surf movie in 70 or 71 or 72, the Barry Kanayapuni sequence was probably scored to a borrowed bootleg Jimi Hendrix song.
Yeah. I'm watching the footage right now
All right.
on EOS. Um, yeah, I gotta kind of agree with Lewis.
Yeah. All right.
He's
Fair
he's a
enough.
little wily. He's like out of control.
Yeah.
But I see the bottom turn thing that you're talking about, but there's a lot of other than that, it's a little out of control.
There's a lot of motion that you would think isn't there, but so maybe that's when I relate to it as him being sort of in this weird chat, but it can also just look a little bit like Joe Cocker performing.
Fascinating. Yeah. Wow, that's a funny take. Would not expect you to pick him as one of your
Yeah.
favorites. Um, let's I want to do a little bit on the EOS drive, fun drive that's
Yeah.
coming up, your favorite segment of the show. Um, that was sarcasm.
I know.
When does it start?
It's on.
It's
It's
on already. Okay, cool.
what is today? The 11th. It's been on since Sunday, and it's going to go until the 17th, I think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen growth year over year with these fund drives, or how have they kind of shaked out?
The fundraisers stay the same, but there's
Okay,
finally been some grant money coming in. And I don't mean like governmental grant, but the Crowell
endowments.
Foundation, Danny Kwok Family Foundation, Keith Kyle, the Maya Auchincloss Foundation. So there's not a little bit, there's been a significant, like game-changing amount of money come in from these bigger things who believe in who see the value in what I'm doing. Um, yeah,
If if I mean, maybe we've already kind of discussed this with the archive project, but if you got if you were to get a $1 million endowment this year, how would the EOS look different in December of 2026?
it's funny. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about if I really got a lot of money, what would my first sort of move be? Because somebody had said to me Steve Hawkins said to me recently, the way you pitch this, Matt, is you say to somebody, hey, donate $10,000 and we can do this set of magazines. We can do an
Right.
entire. And he was saying, do this thing where it's like tiers of magazines. So if you donate $50,000 and we can do 3 years of Surfer or something. And I think that what's going to happen with Archive, I'm sure of it, in fact, is that around the whole sort of surf world, there are people like me who have collections, and there's people who have collections with that they actually of their magazine that they produced, who are dying to have their stuff digitized and placed in a library that's all the other ones at the same time.
Mm.
So there's going to be, I think, uh, a whole sort of network of people, and it may be other surfing nonprofits, or it may be universities, or it may be individuals who are going to want to be doing that scanning work, just flipping pages and doing stuff at that super slow 600 DPI speed. Because if they can do that, upload everything, we can sort of take it there and put it in. We've provided this platform. So in other words, I guess what I'm saying is if I had $1 million, it doesn't mean that I'm hiring people to do this, because I think that the work is going to come from people who want to see their collections preserved and presented. I think the money would be spent more in administration, because I think what I'm not ready for yet, because we haven't got to that level, is if you have 15 different projects coming in from around the world, and there's sort of quality control issues, there's workflow stuff, getting it all to sort of look the right, getting all the data fields filled out. And I know stuff is so boring, but like somebody's got to like managing all that is going to be a massive, massive job. And right now, I'm doing it. Marc Auger is doing it in England. He's been my EOS partner for a lot of years. There's going to eventually be a EOS archive online handbook for how to do all this stuff. So you would go at the top and it would tell you what the scanner settings are, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll try to wrap this up as soon as I can. And then, once we've got the magazine stuff sorted out, we have to start doing the same with all the movies and video,
Yeah.
and then books, and then contest programs like that. So I think there's going to be a lot of admin, and that's not as sexy of a thing to raise money on, but it's
I see the
mostly going to,
value.
yeah, but
Uh,
yeah. So we'll
um,
see. It still feels early. It all feels really still in the sort of building stage, even though you can go on to archive right now and see what 8 issues of a. And the thing that was so important about getting those 8 Peterson surfings. So when you go on to you click a magazine and there it is, and you can flip through the whole magazine. You can also click a thing that will give you a whole ad index, so you can see every ad that will take you to, and the ads are really almost half the fun of these old magazines.
totally agree.
You can also click a table of contents that will give you a thing, so you can go to any article that you want to click right away. So the 8 issues that Peterson's got put up was my own personal proof of concept. This can be done. That was a project. So it was a project within a project, and the whole way to do archive is to break it up into dozens or hundreds of discrete, smaller projects. So somebody's going to end up doing every issue, maybe I will, of Surf Guide magazine. Somebody's going to do every issue you know, of East Coast Surfer, of Atlantic Surfer. And at some point, when it scales up enough, we'll get around to doing all 60 years of Surfer. So and again, that's it's a lot of that's just admin, and a lot of it is,
Totally.
yeah.
Um, I know you're anti AI in this respect, but a lot of that
No.
will become, you can automate a lot of that in the coming years.
I think I could automate it right now in terms of getting sort of helping with SEO and stuff like that. But I'm not sure at this point actually how much of EOS archive I'm not really looking, I don't think, for SEO I'm not looking sort of for hits or views. I'm mostly trying to get this stuff archived, and then somebody who's writing a paper, who's doing some research, somebody who, for whatever reason, wants to delve into all this stuff. It's not a thing that's really meant for Instagram or social media stuff. It's just meant to be an archive,
Yeah.
you know.
Um, so let's take EOS and the archive project aside for 1 minute. Let's say that you could automate or just delegate your day to day
Yeah.
and devote time the next year or maybe even 5 years to doing something entirely different. What type of project would you devote the next year or 5 years to?
Apart from this,
Apart
you,
from this, I mean, let's say
no, I
it's
would go
in
back
surfing.
to
Would
that if I can get archive, if I can get, or I should say, when I get archive up and rolling, and there's probably a new executive director for it, and I can step down, I'll go back to EOS and start writing Sunday joints again. That's what I want to do.
okay.
But fuck,
I
I'm
didn't.
65. I'm not, I don't know. Maybe I will just, maybe I will just go to Portugal and live for a
I,
couple of years and
I
surf.
mean, what I was wondering is, this the week to week of this has probably prevented you from writing books that you would have otherwise written or something like that. I don't know if you had any ambition for anything like that.
No, none.
Gotcha.
It's too
Okay.
hard. It's
Okay,
too hard.
gotcha.
And yeah.
Um, how many, when was the last time you went surfing? Have you been on any trips in 2025?
So I've been on a trip, and this is a good place for me to give my annual or my heartfelt sort of shout out to Kevin Miller, who's sort of single-handedly keeping my surfing life intact, my active life as a surfer. So, you know, Kevin makes all the arrangements because I'm just so pathetic. All the arrangements to do this Costa Rica trip down way down south to the left points. And he's got a board for me, and he does everything. He does everything except sort of push me into the wave. And it was just like last year. This was a few months ago. And it's nerve-wracking for me because I don't know. I spend enough weeks or months in between surfs that I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what my level's at anymore. And I'll go out the first day and just go into the, I'll just spend an hour, screwing up, paddling at the wrong place, duck diving, bailing my board, blowing takeoffs. And then at some point, I'll finally lock into a wave. And if I can get into trim and I can get my knee tucked and I can get going, I'm fucking great. I still got it. I was surfing. It all comes back really quickly. And I'm writing, what was I? I was writing some Devon Howard model Channel Islands. I think it was a 6'9" or 6'10" or something. You know, by the second or third day of getting into some trim, I was doing those Fred Astaire turns, nice big sort of swooping things, and I was just feeling like $1 million. So it was good. And near the end of the trip, a friend of Kevin's ran me over, and it was the most brutal. There was a bunch of guys taking off on a wave as I was paddling out, and I was just trapped. I was sort of in the middle. I couldn't get this way or this way, and I was just deer in headlights. Not deer in headlights. I was just going, well, I don't have a choice here, and I just jumped off the board at the last second, and this guy's fin went through the rail uh, of this board I was riding like a bone cutter. The fin went at the widest part of the board all the way through past the stringer.
Ooh.
And I came up, and first I was just furious because I really wanted to keep surfing, and I was just like resentful that anyone had, it just felt really unfair that I got that fucking run over. Um,
Who's to blame in that scenario?
I don't think I could have done anything different. I do know that, like, in the case where somebody So here's why. There was probably after now I'm just sort of sounds like I'm sort of justifying. There was a long lull. I do this thing where I always sit inside and grovel small waves. I've been
Risky business, dude.
doing that since I was a kid, and I can't stop. I can't stop now. Super lully. This set came. Everybody had been paddling out, and I'm sort of trailing. Um, And so many people paddled for this wave because it had been a lull that nobody was going to back off. So everybody's just focused on catching this wave. And it was, like it was like going into a thing where like 10 people were paddling for it, five pulled out, but there were still five coming at me, and nobody was looking at the guy paddling out. I don't know. Yeah, roast me. I don't know where I would have gone. I don't know if I had a place to have sort of gone, but
Um, was was there another instance where you were aggro and got sounded by the locals or something?
yeah, no, Um, Kevin's
Aggra
friend, God, he was pissed off. Another guy that was almost my age. How embarrassing! A couple of 60-year-old guys talking about wave etiquette. Um, every wave I got, I would get out and walk up to the top of the point. My version of the story is that I would sit at the top of the point, catching my breath, waiting, and then I would drift in and get a wave. So I'm too old to get a ton of waves. And I can't think of that guy's name. He was actually he was a really funny guy. I liked. Do you remember the guy's name? Kevin's friend.
No, I don't know.
He was the guy whose house we were staying in. So it was double awkward because we were staying in his big beautiful house, and I'd already met him and we'd gotten along and I thought he was hilarious. The next thing I knew, he was just fucking yelling, because he was claiming that I'd gone up and cut in line and da da da. But whatever I forget that point whose name I won't say. There was 50 people out. It was just a crowded, messy, day. It wasn't great surf, and he just dropped in on me, and I kind of came up high, and he had to edge out of the wave. And it was my fault for paddling, for being inside.
Yeah. And was
My
that the
take was
same
different. My
was
take
that
was
the
different.
same guy who ran you over?
No, it was not the same guy who ran me over. No. Uh-uh.
Okay.
So
Um,
anyway, yeah, we've sat here and spent too much time on the two worst parts of the trip that was otherwise really good. So fuck you for that. I
I
actually
think
go ahead.
it might be a reflection just of you not getting enough surfing. That when you go on a trip like that, you're just overamped, you know?
But how can I be overamped when I don't think I have the physical energy. I don't have enough energy, I don't think, to overamp at this point. Like there's no way I was getting more waves than the guy who was pissed off. It's so stupid. God, what a stupid thing. He was a really hardcore local that I think deserved to get tons of waves. Um, but I wasn't getting anywhere near as many waves as he was.
Yeah. Fair
Fucking
enough.
cut all this. This is all so stupid.
No, no, no. I love it. It's perfect. So relatable.
It's so
Um,
relatable, and I don't know, we had so many other days where we got tons of waves, and everybody was taking turns and having fun. And me getting run over was the low point. I don't know what if I had to gauge what the low point of the trip was, it would have been those are the two low points of my past like 20 years of surfing, and they happen within like 48 hours of each other. So
was that the last time you surfed?
no, I've surfed twice since then in Manhattan Beach, but just shitty Manhattan Beach waves.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Um, this is a standardized question that I ask a lot of people, but what's the best surfing that you've ever witnessed?
It wasn't, I can't say that the best surfing I've ever witnessed would have been any number of times when I was on the beach to see Tom Curran surf, for sure. But the thing that I remember really well, and I'm not sure if I've already told you this or if I've told somebody else. I remember this really clearly because it was so kind of unexpected. when I was living right up the stairs, like four houses away from T Street in San Clemente. You ever surf there? Have you ever visit or been
I mean,
there? It's
yes, I've surfed there a lot, but I'm not a big fan.
just a terrible, not terrible. It's just this funky wave that is surfable 355 days a year. There's always something out there. I surfed it all the time. If I didn't have enough time to go to lowers or to uppers or whatever, I would surf T Street. It was right there in front of my house. And I would always run down there after work when I was working at Surfer. And one afternoon, it was onshore and a little overhead and lowish tide. And low tide at T Street, it actually is a reef. You can sort of get these roll-ins, and you just kind of hope something's going to happen. And there was very few people out. But when I paddled out, the person I first saw riding was Matt Archibald. So he and Christian and all those guys surfed at T Street a lot. But he was a big, you didn't see him at T Street that often by then because this was maybe 86 or 87 or something. And as I was paddling out, I watched Matt roll into a set wave at T Street, and he just surfed it perfectly. It was still maybe the most impressive thing I've seen while sort of paddling out, just watching him ride this crap shoulder or head high wave to the beach, doing just what he wanted, fast, really fast, and nothing, at that point he was sort of famous, him and Christian both for, early version of airs and stuff and sort of, you know, trick surfing. There was none of that. He was powerful, super fast, and he had a flow that was really very similar to Tom Curran. He
Mhm.
was flashier than Tom, you know, maybe even faster in a wave like that. And I was just astounded at how good a surfer Matt Archibald was at that point. And he was probably 17 or 18 or something. And that's something that I remember very well. He had a really bright wetsuit. It was probably this thing with lavender sleeves, and his board had black rails, and the color of it's in my head. The turns he was doing is in my head. And this is 40 years later, And he's always been one of my very favorite surfers.
Really?
Hmm.
Yeah. I grew up really admiring his style of surfing and the videos that I saw. And then he started spending a lot of time in Newport Beach when I was surfing, late
What?
teens or something.
Oh, okay.
And so I would see him surfing in Newport regularly. And he was still surfing. He was past his prime probably a little bit
Yeah.
then, but still surfing incredibly fast. And like there'd be sections where, Newport's pretty hollow. And there'd be a wave that I thought was the perfect barrel. And it was even late. You'd have to like backdoor it. And instead of backdooring it, he'd go straight to the bottom and go straight into the lip and crack the lip on a section that's like, to me,
Right.
doubling up and fully like a barrel section. He's just cracking it through the lip, blasting the fins out, coming down, landing it perfectly. I'm like, what the
Oh,
hell,
he
dude?
was. I think I think he rode all the tubes he would have wanted to ride in at backdoor and off the wall for a few years. That was his whole thing was surfing backdoor and off the wall, and
Yeah.
he was, he got all those tubes. It was sort of a thing at that point. Just him and Christian were both kind of coming on at the same time. It was almost like a package deal for a little while with those two, and they would surf lowers a lot at the same time. Um, and there was such a difference between the two of them because Christian um, had no flow whatsoever as a surfer. He was incredible. He would set the but you would see Christian take off, and uh, you would just stand by and wait for him to do something incredible. But he would just sort of pump and set something up and do the big thing. And that was kind of it, and that's how we got all those photos of him in the air, and that was legitimately like nobody was doing what he was doing in terms of air surfing. And also, and Christian was doing a lot of other creative, weird stuff. He always was a really free thinking surfer, But Matt, Matt was the one who beginning to end on a wave was perfect and beautiful and really, really flowing. And I remember talking to him. I interviewed both those guys for Surfer Magazine profiles I did not too long before I left the magazine. And Christian was a lot more fun because Christian is always fun to talk with because he just took big swings at people and he made fun of Damian Hardman and he made fun of he just shit talked everything. And it wasn't done that Christian was kind of the first guy to do that. And Matt had almost nothing to say. He was really shy. And I felt Matt was one of the first people who felt like I'm in the wrong generation here. I was only 28, so it wasn't a huge thing, but I just I felt like a uncle or something. So there was nothing much to say, but I do remember him saying to me, um, I said something about how good his style was compared to a lot of other young surfers. And he said, well, that's because the surfing I watch when I go home to watch surfing is mostly Phil Edwards and mostly David Nueva. I watched longboard. He watched old stuff. That's where he was getting his tips from. Not entirely, but he was really into watching old Bruce Brown films with Phil Edwards in them.
That is
You could,
amazing.
and there he was the one who, as much as I was blown away at how progressive Christian was, as much as I would rubberneck Christian just like everybody else was. Man, I really, my heart was really, not my heart, I was way more drawn to Matt surfing because he
Yeah.
was start to finish beautiful.
I got on YouTube the other day, and then the algorithm fed me a video from a producer I don't follow or don't know, but it was Matt on the North Shore, recently, like within the last month, surfing off the wall again.
Great. Yeah.
I was glad to see it. He looked good. Like he obviously he's older now, but his same kind of positioning, same approach,
I think
and
if you're he's so naturally gifted. And I think as long as you keep your weight down and you stay flexible, you can probably do it without much effort.
good advice.
I'm glad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep your weight down, David.
I'm currently counting calories, believe it or not. I'm using an app to help. Wait, is that in reference to you having seen me recently? Jeez, I'm
No,
almost
no,
offended.
I was just giving a sign off to you. No, I'm keeping my weight down. Maybe what I'm saying to myself, maybe what I'm saying there is that's also my advice to myself, which is if I only surf a few times a year, if I keep every now and then I'll just flop on the floor here and do a stretch. And if I keep my weight down, I feel like I'll be able to do it. And you know what's what I was saying earlier about how nervous I get before I surf? It's because I'm so terrified that someday I'm going to go out there and not be able to hit to find that, to lock back into that groove I can still find. Because it does get harder, but part of what feels great when I surf well, a big part of it is just that I remind myself how good it feels to ride waves. And I say all the time how much, "Oh, I just want to body surf these days, or I just want to go boogie boarding with Teddy." And I love doing those things, but nothing feels as good as standing on a board,
Mm,
riding, and just doing, and not just, I don't mean just angling, because I don't like riding, I don't dislike, but I don't get much out of riding a longboard and just angling. I mean, standing on a board and just sort of doing some kind of flow where you really are sort of in rhythm with the wave up and down. So remembering that I still love that feeling so much is the main attraction, but it also means a lot to me to just think to be able to check the box and say I can still do it. So the
yeah,
nervous part when I paddle out in Costa Rica or even Manhattan Beach, the nervous part for me is like, God, what if I can't do it now? I always do this trip I get all up in my head. And so far, knock on wood, I can still do it.
good. Yeah, that's enough motivation. I mean, if you're staying active year round just for those couple of times a year to get
Right,
that feeling, that's a
right.
powerful thing.
And I get to walk home and it's like it's like I've punched my ticket, for the next few months at least. I'm still in there. I'm still doing it.
Yeah, good. Glad to hear it. Still identify as a surfer.
I do.
Good. All right, Matt. Well, thank you very much. As always, this was entertaining and educational.
Thanks, David. I'll talk
You're
to you soon.
welcome. Okay, sounds good.
Bye.
Surf Splendor.